As a lot of you may or may not know, October is Archaeology Month. And a couple of years ago, we were scratching our head trying to figure out what kind of a program we could do. And we did a wonderful program with on the archaeology of Cape Cod a couple of years ago. But then we started thinking about this wonderful gem hunt that we've done, and it's a pretty exciting time for all of us. And from the crowd, we can see that we all feel the same way. So my name is Lauren Robinson. I just want to welcome you here tonight. There are restrooms if you need them right out the back door on this floor. You take a right, the right door on your left. And maybe all of you could hear what Tom has to say and David. And just thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having
All
us.
of you.
I borrowed Lauren's pointer. I have the same one at my house. Hi everyone, my name is Tom Keys, and this is my home. That's my wife in the back. And we'd just like to explain to you this, I guess you could call it a journey. The journey we've been having with the home that we thought we were buying a 200-year-old house, and it's turned out that we were supposed to afford it. So what I'm going to do is we're here from 6:30 to about 8 o'clock. First half hour, I'm going to talk about the house, the discovery, what we uncovered, and where we're going. And then the second 2/3, because he talks a lot more than I do, David Wheelock will talk about the archaeology that's now stemmed from this discovery, and it's really getting exciting. So I'm just going to jump right into it because he's going to cut me off, and I want to get moving. This is the house. And by the way, David and I have been working together with Greg Chartier, who's also an archaeologist, for the past 3 years. And if you see a little Mutt and Jeff type of interplay going on, well, yeah, we're getting to know each other rather well. So we're going to play off each other a little bit also. But in 2010, this home on Water Street, 22 Water Street, was for sale, had been for sale for some time. And I had gone by and looked at it and was not impressed. No one had lived in it for just over 15 years. The gentleman that owned it, he was at another facility. He was at that time in his life, he went to another facility, and he passed in early, I think it was in 2002, and willed it to his stepchildren. And the house just really, although under property management, wasn't well cared for. And so I called up a friend that was a realtor, and she took me into it. And I said, oh no, paint literally peeling off the walls. That's how bad it was. And I walked away. And then I dreamed about it. And it wouldn't get out of my head, so I called back up and said, let me take another look. Meanwhile, my wife knows none of this. I go back in and take a look, and I go, oh, this house has potential. And boy, every square inch inside the house and outside the house needs to be redone. We thought the house was an 1817 colonial. So a little bit of time went on, and the house was really not priced right for the amount of work that was needed. Eventually it got about right, and then I had to all of a sudden explain this to my wife. And fortunately she agreed, and we started this journey of acquiring this 1817 colonial. Well, that was December 2010. And my contractor, Jay McKay Remodeling and Construction, went upstairs into this room here, to which there was all kinds of just horrible, you could tell later, plastered walls and ceilings that were in tough shape. And they called me up when I was at a customer of an Avon. Oh, look at that. Called me up, and I was at a customer, and they said, hey, when you get back on Cape, we got to show you something. So I got there at night, and it was dark because there was no electricity at this point. I'm in there and I go, huh, those are hand-hewn beams. Those were not cut by machine, it was done by hand with an axe. I said, this is not 1817 does not sound right. So I got in touch with a few people who got in touch with this gentleman, David Wheelock, and the next day, or next couple of days, they stopped by, and the first thing David Wheelock said, and I don't know this gentleman at this point, he looks up and goes, oh no. Here we go. Meanwhile, I own this house that needs complete rehab, and I get someone saying, oh no. So, in that same room on the floor, there is painted floors and one of those heating vents so the heat downstairs can come up, obviously in an older house. We pop open the grate and literally stuck the head in. And we're looking at between the two floors now, and we find more hand-hewn beams. But what's interesting is that's the floor, the underside of the upstairs. That's the original paint. White paint, blackened beams, which is it's called a Harlequin decoration, which is black beams, white ceiling. And that was roughly what century was that?
It's very commonplace in the 17th and the early 18th century when it's some people, some architectural historians, Cummings refers to it as the Harlequin period, where you see a lot of the structural timbers are painted black and the flat surfaces are painted white. It's not the first time.
Can't see a damn thing.
But it's fairly commonplace.
So here I am, I'm sticking my camera in, taking pictures, and he's thinking this and not saying it at that point. And he goes, let's go up into the attic. So we go up in the attic. Just David and I, and here we are, we go up into the attic, and he's pointing out these things called purlins and ridge poles and all kinds of wide boards. And he turns to me, I'm sitting here, he's over there, and he says, well, it's a 9.9 out of 10 for preservation. I go, what? He says, well, at this point, I would bet it's at least 1650. Well, luckily the ceiling height is low and I'm already sitting, because I have to explain to my wife that our 200-year-old house is 370, 360, and it needs a complete redo. I asked David to tell Melissa and he said no. So, it's a great discovery. Don't take my comments, to heart. It's a great discovery. And then, if you look over here, you see there's a hole. And this is the front of the house, and going towards the back of the house, there's another gable end going this way. You stick your head inside that hole, and lo and behold, there's a roof in there. They just covered it over. And a better picture is this one. It's still there. Now, we had opened up some walls and all to expose this from the outside to take the picture, not to take the picture to do construction. But the way you see it, dusty and dirty and pieces, and is exactly the way it is right now, and is going to stay that way. It's a time capsule. These shakes are, what would you say?
From myself and several colleagues of mine looked at this particular roof. All the shingles are hand-riven and then skied on the non-weather end where it goes underneath the shingle. The weather end is the area that sticks out inside the weather, and then the shingles are kind of beveled in a wedge shape so they lie down on each other. But looking at the hardware that they're used to attach them with, they're all wrought nails, they're not cut, so it could mean that kind of stuff. Wrought nails were made basically since the time of Christ all the way up until about 1810. So that's kind of a shot in the dark. The way we looked at it, the way the roof's laid, we kind of felt comfortable with maybe a late 18th century.
Hey, can you talk a little louder, please?
Sure. We think it's probably late 18th century. But this is kind of anyone's guess really on the dates of the roof, but it's certainly before 1810.
And what's interesting about that, and all of these little details start telling you the story about where this house came from and what happened. That this roof is sitting in this position, preserved, somewhere around the late 1700s, early 1800s. That date is going to transfer into other things that we've also seen. So there was movement in this house around that period. And so when this house, we believe, was moved here at this point, I think that shedded dormer on the back got added, and this all just covered up. And there it stays, and there it will stay. It's going to be there forever. And you can also see how wide these boards are. I mean, they're monsters with bevels and with big gaps as they shrunk. But I remember going upstairs as they took the ceiling out on this end, and I'm looking at it in amazement. It's almost as if I have like this Walt Disney reproduction of a 17th century house inside my house. You had to have seen it. It was surreal, standing on the outside looking in. Upstairs in the attic, more evidence is, here's the chimney as it sits. And you can see, here's the old boards for the roof. But you can see the modern wood here, where the chimney was much larger. So obviously the hearth was larger downstairs at one point, and the chimney was much larger, but as time came on and potbelly stoves came in vogue, and you didn't need this monster hearth, it got smaller, and they just used it for heating, which is why you also had that hole in the floor to let heat up from the potbelly downstairs. So then, as we moved downstairs, you know, the downstairs room was not going to be gutted. It wasn't having a lot of work done to it, until we found out there's a lot more behind these false walls. What they did was there was interior walls and exterior walls, with an air gap about this wide. So they built a house within the house, and once we found out, it all had to come down to expose it again, and expose it forever. I mean, I could have buttoned it up for future generations not to see it, but we wanted to expose it with modern techniques. We can actually insulate the house and not have to have that thick wall. And we find this. This is over the front door. And when we exposed it, we just caught a glimpse. You have to actually come up and down and look. But this is what we thought at the time was wallpaper from the 1800s. So David said, take a picture of this and send it over to this woman over at Plymouth Antiquarian. She'd be interested to see it. Took a picture, I texted it over to her, and my phone rang within minutes. Where are you? She said, I said, well, I'm insane. So here's, it's actually a swag over the front door on one of the old beams. I said, well, the gentleman I'm working with says it's from the 1800s. She says, no, that's like late 1700s federal corn paper. And what's interesting is she goes, I've never seen the green survive. Because it's been buttoned up, the light hasn't destroyed it. So here we have a very, very rare piece of wallpaper. So the things we're finding constantly is, they're really, small treasures, but great bits of information. Now back up to that room upstairs. You can see now, this was the thickness of that wall inside. The walls were about, say, this thick. We took all of that down. Now what we're exposing is, these are the outside sheathing boards, wide boards, all the way up. This is the upstairs room again. And here is the gunstock posts and the falling braces, wind braces, to hold it up during construction. This room was added second. The house started out with the room downstairs only, 18 feet by 12 floor. And that was the first structure, very small. Within probably 5 years or so, they put on a second structure as they had children and things moved along. And so that's why the construction's a little different, but you can see it was done probably by the same hand, in the same period. So this now upstairs has been left exposed. There's some great modern insulation that now goes up against to leave these gunstocks open so that you can still have a living house. You can actually heat it and live in it. And this is actually my master bedroom right now, so it's gonna have some heat. And it's allowed us to leave these exposed. The braces, the gunstock posts, although not in its entirety, we've only lost about that much, which is wonderful. And if you've been up there, it's a spectacular look. The house, when you look at it, is a full colonial. Door in the middle, 2 windows to the right, 2 windows to the left. But that happened in 1928. 1928, they put on the right side of the house. From the door to the right was 1928, put on by Eustace Dearborn. Actually, Eustace Dearborn's father, who was an architect. Eustace was the subsequent son that owned it that I bought it from. This is the only picture of my house prior to 1928. I can't find a picture of this house anywhere. There's a picture of just about every other house in Sandwich that was around before that time, except for mine. I have pictures of the lawn right here. I have pictures of the lawn here. Aerial photos up here. This is it.